New York Attorney General Letitia James in federal court today pleading not guilty to 2 criminal counts against her following a very public, very persistent demands from President Donald Trump that she be prosecuted.
Letitia James is a dirty cop.
A crooked AG, Letitia James.
Letitia James from New York. This is another real Lola. Letitia James is totally controlled by Washington. Letitia Peekaboo James, Peekaboo. She's controlled. She's got serious Trump derangement syndrome. Letitia James, a real bad one.
The 67-year-old, 67th New York AG, now vowing to fight and not doing it alone. As we come on the air this afternoon, a new reminder of the Shakespearean proverb that politics can and does, in fact, make for strange bedfellows. Lawyers for Letitia James now telling the court they're teaming up with James Comey in an event to get both of their criminal cases thrown out, combining motions to disqualify President Trump's hand-picked U.S. attorney in the case, arguing that her appointment was illegal. And the new duo of James and James could expand soon, or maybe if and when the Trump Justice Department moves forward with other cases against some of the president's high-profile critics.
There's no fear today. No fear. No fear. No fear. No fear. Because I believe that justice will rain down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream.
All right, let's get off the sidelines, head into the arena. My panel is here. We're also joined by CNN crime and justice correspondent Caitlin Polantz. Caitlin, let's walk through Letitia James' arraignment today and what happens next with her.
Well, Casey, she pleaded not guilty. The court hearing ended. They set a trial date. It's going to be in January, so only 3 months from now. But things got off so fast to start that we've already seen an argument on paper from Letitia James's defense team. It's that argument going up against Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. attorney, saying she doesn't have the authority to prosecute this case. The same argument that James Comey is going to be making and already is making in his own case in the same district. I'm going to read a little bit from this. Ms. Halligan, Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, lacked the power to present this case to the grand jury or sign this indictment, and she cannot continue to supervise this prosecution. They also write, this court must reject the executive brazen attempt to sidestep the constitutional and statutory limitations on the appointment of U.S. attorneys. So essentially what they're arguing and what we're going to hear at a hearing in 3 weeks where James's defense team and the other James Comey, his defense team, will be arguing this same thing. They're saying that Lindsay Halligan was appointed to this position too far into an administration to not have someone confirmed by the U.S. Senate into that post, that this is Donald Trump run amok, running the Justice Department as the president, and that also she wasn't someone that was coming from inside the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Justice Department to become the U.S. Attorney and prosecute this case, take it through the grand jury. That's the first big battle. The next big battle, though, will be Letitia James's attorneys arguing another very similar thing to what James Comey's team will be arguing, that Donald Trump has launched a revenge tour against them. They're going to argue that their cases, both of them separately, they'll argue that their cases should be dismissed because the prosecutors shouldn't have brought them to begin with, that it was a constitutional violation and that they were vindictively sought out, that the Justice Department was weaponized. So we're going to hear that over and over again, but not too many times over because this case is moving so fast and the trial date is not far away at all. Casey?
Yeah, pretty remarkable. All right, Caitlin Polantz, thank you as always for your reporting. Really appreciate it. Joining us now in the arena to discuss is Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He is the ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, always great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I want to start with your reaction today here to what we saw from Letitia James. Do you think the government has a case here?
Well, I think what we're seeing with James is a pattern now where criminal defendants targeted by Donald Trump are alleging that the new U.S. attorneys who are installed just to prosecute them are not legitimately appointed, that the prosecution is patently unconstitutional because it is vindictive and selective in nature, and that the real justice process that existed before ended up with no indictments, and they had to implant these new U.S. attorneys to do it. So, I think that the merits of the case could be, debatable once you got into that, except the problem is that the government is going to face all of these very difficult threshold motions to dismiss based on extremely, aberrant and exceptional circumstances relating to a prosecution.
Do you think it's wise for James and Comey to combine legal forces here?
Well, I wasn't aware they were doing that. I think that their threshold motions in any event are going to be very similar because Donald Trump is clearly on a rampage against his political foes. And this cuts completely against the American system of justice. If you go to an authoritarian regime, they don't have a doctrine called selective or vindictive prosecution because that's built into the system. But here, where the rule of law is supposed to govern, that's totally antithetical to what it's all about when you have a president essentially identifying people to be investigated and to be prosecuted. And that's so clearly what's been happening in these cases.
I also want to walk through with you something we learned about yesterday from the former special counsel in the January 6th investigation, Jack Smith. He wrote a letter to your committee, the House Judiciary Committee, as well as to the Senate Judiciary Committee, offering to testify in public about the investigation that he led, having obtained toll records for a number of Republican lawmakers in the course of that investigation. Would you like to see Jack Smith testify?
Absolutely. We have seen the special counsels and the independent counsels going all the way back to Kenneth Starr all come and testify in public about their investigations and about all of the legal issues that are raised there. And there's no reason for this to be a back room behind closed door session led by the Republicans on the committee. It should be a public hearing where everybody can hear him.
I was going to say, do you think Jim Jordan will go for it? Will he go for having it in public?
Well, he should go for it if he is willing to honor the precedent of our committee, which has always had the special counsels come in and testify in public before the entire committee, before the Congress, and before the public. And the only reason they wouldn't do that is if they're afraid that Jack Smith would be.
So let's start with where Lisa left off. And Judge, I'm going to come back to you. This idea that the defense is going to file a motion questioning the eligibility of Lindsay Halligan in her role. Does that sound like a strong approach or strategy for a defense lawyer to take?
It's an unusual one because we're rarely in such a position, but it is Pat Fitzgerald's duty. It's his job to, turn over every stone and look behind every door and make sure they make every argument. And if this is a viable one, he'll make it. It's hard to have any insight because U.S. attorneys are U.S. attorneys, and we don't run into this issue. We don't run into an issue where someone gets fired and then someone is put in, so quickly and somewhat surreptitiously into a position. But the real issue here is something a little bit different, which is this isn't necessarily about the trial or the process or whether Mr. Comey is guilty or not guilty and whether there's a trial. This is really about humiliation. It's getting him out there. It's having him in, cops and Kevlar jackets going to pick him up and that wish. And that's really what's troubling. But in terms of that motion, that will be determined. But I think Lisa Rubin was right that the indictment may still stand even if she doesn't. The fact that someone else didn't sign it may be more technical, but we'll find that out.
Rebecca, what do you make of what we learned about how the lawyers acknowledged in court these prosecution lawyers, that were brought in from the North Carolina we were discussing district? So they said they didn't see the case. They acknowledged how new this was to them. What does that suggest to you? And are you surprised even more so that they decided to join forces with this office?
Yes. So, you don't go into court, especially in a case like this, which, as we've said, it is very hard to prove a lying to Congress count. And that's because you have to show that this is an intentional falsehood. So to the extent that there's any wiggle room in the words that the individual said, that is a defense. And you need to show that there is no wiggle room, that this person intentionally lied, that they said something factual, and that fact is absolutely untrue, and they knew it to be untrue. That is extremely hard to prove. So when normally a case is put together, as Chris was noting earlier, the FBI or the investigators put this case together in a very careful way, bring this evidence to a prosecutor who himself or herself would review this evidence and make sure that they are behind it and then go into court. So it is extremely unusual that you would have a situation where the prosecutors assigned to this case say to themselves, like, we don't, I mean, this can happen. I was a state prosecutor. This can happen in state court where it's just like there's a lot of shuffle and back and forth. But in the federal system, it's very rare. And in a case like this, with a count like this, it's even rarer.
What do you think about the piece of the classified intelligence, Chris, and that being an issue for Comey's lawyers, being able to access and have the security clearances that are needed?
Well, they'll get it. Number one, they've had them before, so the court will order this. And I'm not quite sure how much classified information will have to be produced for this. The charge on its face is not something you would have a ton of classified information involved in.
So remember when I said that sooner or later, Letitia James and James Comey were going to end up on the same side? Maybe not officially, but definitely in spirit? Yeah, well, it's happened. You could call them Team James, or James Squared, if you want to make it sound like a pop duo ready to drop a remix after they're done taking down Trump. But jokes aside, what started as an informal alignment has now become an official one. They're literally joining legal motions, responding to Trump's actions that have clearly crossed the line with both of them. Now, don't get me wrong, their individual cases are totally separate. They're dealing with different charges, different legal issues, different courts. They're not co-defendants in some giant Trump conspiracy case or anything like that. But what's undeniable is the pattern. They've both become targets. That's the common thread that keeps tightening around this situation. And then you have that retired judge we talked about, the one who basically threw the whole thing out. She didn't just question the legitimacy of the case, she flat out said, "I dismiss this." There's no validity here. Of course, we'll have to wait for the main trial judge to speak, but that statement was loud. It sent a message that this case and others like it hold no real weight. And it's not just her other prosecutors and judges have hinted at the same thing. No substance, no credibility, no traction. Meanwhile, you've got the John Bolton situation, which lives in its own universe. Everyone can see that one for what it is, pure political revenge. Bolton's on Trump's personal hit list, and everyone knows it. The twist, though, is that the legal footing in his case might actually exist, at least technically, depending on how you interpret the law. But that same legal backbone, it's nowhere to be found in the Comey or Letitia James cases. And that's exactly why that retired judge, based on her experience, dismissed it without hesitation.